the synthetic foods that are poisons, all poisons to our body. It's called the acronym is SAD, Standard American Diet, or MAD, Modern American Diet. You ever hear those two things? Here we go. So we have to realize. So here we go. Here's the solution. Because I want to hear, we have some great shares. I want everybody's share after I finish here. So it goes, in the second paragraph on page 25, the great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences. Our perception change. That's a spiritual experience when we make it all about being centered. Don't self-centered fear. If you're in fear of what you had eaten, like yesterday, you say you had binge or whatever you had done, or you're into other addictions, whether it's anorexia or whatever it is, and you all of a sudden decide that you're going to have guilt about it and shame. Not letting God's consciousness in. That the source, the happiness here, we're blocking it out. Those are defects of character. It's called. We're in the present. Look, if right now you're not, say you're binging or any other compulsions you have that I discussed before, if you're not doing any of these compulsions, you're fine. It's an eternal present. But we go to the past or the future. So right now is all that's important. That's all that matters. And you can't. If you go back and you think, well, I look, even with people, I said this to that person. We get fearful. We can't. Then we can't deal with people and situations in life, and then our lives become miserable and become irritable and discontent. So anyway, it goes on to say here, which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life, towards the food, our attitude, perception change. You know what? People say to me, what do you mean by perception change? What is your perception now? You've been brainwashed. Do you realize your perception is one of being brainwashed? So why not wash your brains out with something positive, which was God-given? God-given didn't want us to make food our whole life. Here it is, making food a higher power, an image, an idol. What do? We come home, close the shades, and we eat. We go to an affair, and it's all about the food. I drove in my car, I'd be eating the food. I wouldn't even see God's nature. I wouldn't even be relating to anything in life. We want to feel the energy and the spirit around us. We want that joy and happiness. When anything else we feel, look, it's like this. Any other emotions you have and feelings about the past, the blues, the upset, resentments, whatever it is, these are all things that are not of God-given grace. God's given grace is to be in the present and joyous. These emotions, we have, look, it's just like people go to sometimes see a sad movie or, even some love songs, reminiscent of the past. We don't need to go there. But I'll tell you something else about it that, when we get into our upset and our like say we get anxious or we get depressed or whatever it is, again, when you do think about it, there are people, I guess, so-called normal. When we're normal, they say, I love to listen to blues song. I like that blues feeling. But no, some of us here, when we get depressed, I'm getting depressed, I'm going crazy, my life is over, and I'm so depressed. We can become friends. Again, I said about meditating, getting centered. I said with the food, when resist the food, but don't resist your emotions. When you get anxious, some people, why do they jump out of airplanes? Why do they go see scary movies? They love that exhilarating feeling. But no, in our case, like normal people do, they might feel a little bit anxious, but we take it to the extreme. We say, oh my God, we fear the fear. Ever hear that one? Fear the fear. So it all has to do with this revolutionary change. When we get out of the self, we're not only with the food, but our own death we can accept. Can you imagine that? The freedom, the humility of accepting your own death, your own demise. But the ego, that's our real life. The ego doesn't want to die. With the food, it's all about the ego. The ego comes in and we believe it. The ego says, if you don't gobble up all this food, you're going to be miserable. You're going to be depressed. You're going to be upset. That's the ego's telling us. We have a better way, and it's talking about it here through this God consciousness. That's what the steps are all about. When we get this God consciousness, hey, what's the reason we took the food and the alcohol and the drugs for? To be happy. Why is it we do anything in life? Why do we go after money, success, all these material things on the outside, the pleasure? Food being one of the main ones. And 75% of our country is addicted to it. Right? What is it all about? It's all about, say, I got a solution to my problem, I'll have more food. But it brings the devastation and misery. Like I said, I have the list here of all the diseases and, the type 2 diabetes and the heart disease and all this stuff, high blood pressure. Again, I'm a registered pharmacist. I know all about this stuff. And no amount of I'm not saying you shouldn't take medications if you need it, but I've seen people go on from one medication to another medication. We have a solution to food. I have a lot of meetings about the food. If you watch my other meetings on YouTube, you'll see I have all the medications back there. I was on 10, 15 medications, had all those serious illnesses. They all went away. Losing the weight, eating healthy. One ingredient, people always say, well, what's your diet? It's one ingredient. It's being God consciousness. What I mean by one ingredient is you could eat all day long. People talk about, they say, oh, these high carbohydrate foods and low carbohydrate, all these diets, again, the Jenny Craig, whatever, millions of diets and things like that. It's not the food itself so much as what we put on it. Do you imagine that? Do you understand that? It's the sauces. You go to a restaurant, the sauces they put on it. So a salad could be 100 calories of salad, but by the time they're done, read on those menus, they have the amount of calories, could be 1,200 calories. The perception change, the change in thinking. And it says here, getting back, the central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that a Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could not do for ourselves. We can't do it. Our best thinking got us here. Step 1 said we had to be restored to sanity. And if you don't want to go to the extent of a God, look, whatever created us and how we ever created in this universe, again, look at the way your heart beats, the whole body, how it works. Our mind is the same way. We were meant to be happy and joyous. That's the source within us. Whatever you say, and the way I could prove it is that when you get out of the self, you become happy. When you're upset, what are you thinking about the self? When you're into the food, it's the ego saying, I got to have this food, no matter what. Look, when you get that hunger, or when you get upset, or when you get all these emotions, say hunger is one of them, you can observe it. Don't try to fight it. Don't try to say, well, I got to weigh my food, or yesterday get up mad at yourself, what you did, or maybe you say, oh, no, I'll never resolve it. When you're centered, you see life, but you see the food differently. The glorious, glorious food, again, it's just so amazing. When you get out of it, again, a lot of things with the palate. Doc's opinion talks about a period of detoxification. Do you realize those sugars are synthetic, is a process thing, right? It's processed. The oils are processed, but also the synthetic sugars and stuff that they make, those are 10 times sweeter. They ruin the palate. But when you get centered and you have water and you taste it, fruit is amazing. You know, I'll tell you, even going for vegetables. You know, hey, Popeye was right all the time, but I'll tell you something about the vegetables. He was. These old wives' tales about eating vegetables. It has so many nutrients in it. It's amazing, healthy, and the things it could do. But the point with the vegetables is it brings the taste. Now, you know, when I broccoli or carrots, can you imagine that? Broccoli is so delicious. I'll tell you, actually, if I had a choice, I like broccoli, but carrots are good too. When you have that perception change and you eat eggplant, these things, they taste so delicious. It's that perception change. You know, I don't have to try anymore. You put in front of me a plate with 2,000 calories with all this oil and sugar. It's like motor oil now in my mouth. My perceptions change physiologically. My taste buds, it's called educating the palate. That perception change. It's just amazing. It says here, and it tells about that perception change here. I read on page 25. The answer is, look, the reason I brought up meditation is because prayer and meditation, that's getting centered. That's hearing our higher consciousness, which is the source within us. Why do people in religions fast too, and they get away from the food? Because the food's another material thing. But we'll intuitively know. Again, we won't need to be successful. We won't need, need is the cause, desire is the cause of all suffering. When you have it, look, I don't have to be a likable person, but I could get, people can like me. In other words, when you want to be likable, when you want to be successful, when you want to resist the food, when you want to use food as your higher power, that's when you're not successful. When you get rid of all of these, the ego, it's selfish. Page 62, what is it? It tells us what the problem is again. I read the solution, but on page 62. Now that on page 62, it tells the problem, but at the bottom it tells the solution. So here we go. This big book, every page, every paragraph, you go on any page here, it tells you what it is. But on page, even here, my book is falling apart. I'm telling you, I've read this a million times, but on page 62. But the first amount of times I read it through my brain. So anyway, these steps and these traditions aren't some type, again, I always say this, it's not some kind of cult. In Overeaters Anonymous, it's the actual, if you read these first 164 pages of the big book, all the religions and philosophies, the way I know is because I had Eastern, Western prayer meditation, going back to what the topic is, step 11, prayer meditation, to improve our conscious contact with God, but to see His will for us. Is God's will for us when we get centered? Is it to have